Today's first reading and gospel are all about the corruption of priests and how it has decimated the people in Israel in Malachi's time and continues to do so in Jesus' time. Our Heavenly Father in the first reading, he's mad at priests. Jesus in the gospel, he's mad at priests. And let's be honest, don't we all just get a little mad at our priests sometimes? Don't smile, don't nod. It's okay, because even I get mad at priests, and I'm one of them. We expect our leaders to be the holiest and the kindest and most loving members of our church, and we have a right to expect it. And to be fair, the vast majority of the time they shape up pretty well. But we've all got our weak spots. And when I read Jesus railing on the Pharisees today, using their status to take the seats of honour and to sit on the front rows in the synagogues and get the best food at the banquets, I started to sweat a little. You see, I like sports, and from time to time I managed to attend some sweet sporting gigs on the strength of the collar. So, 5 years ago, remember the Olympics in London, how good that was? Well, I heard that the Olympic Village, which had the athletes in it, just the athletes, was looking for Catholic chaplains. So I was asked, I volunteered myself basically, I begged to get the job. And so I got into the Olympic Village as one of the chaplains, and we had a meeting to discuss how we're meant to be chaplains to the athletes. You're not to approach them, only they can approach you. You have to just be there waiting for the athletes to come to you. But I had one goal in mind. I was going to meet as many athletes as possible, take lots of selfies and get lots of autographs, and to crown it all off, I was going to get myself into that Olympic stadium. So at this meeting, and they're talking about Olympic values, I'm like, yeah, fine, intending to break every single promise that I made. So, in the end, the best I could do in terms of selfies was get a selfie with Gabby Roslin. Do you remember her? Yeah, Gabby Roslin, she presented the Big Breakfast. Kids don't know who she is, but back in my day she was quite famous. So there's me in my Olympic uniform with Gabby Roslin. So I didn't do that well. And I'd been waiting all the time to get an invite into the Olympic Stadium, and it didn't come. Until a few minutes before the final night of the athletics, on the Saturday evening in the Olympic Stadium, where Mo Farah was running the 5,000 metres, and Usain Bolt was running in the 4x100 relay. So these tickets were like gold dust. A parishioner phones me up and he says, Father James, I've got a special pass that will get you into the Olympic Stadium. And I started to go a little bit dizzy. I must admit, I couldn't believe my heart started to beat. I started to tremble. All these dreams were coming true right at the last minute. But then I remembered something. I was the only priest on site, and I had to do Mass at the same time as the events in the Olympics. So, obviously, I did exactly what you would expect me to do. I took that ticket and I ran straight into the Olympic Stadium. As I ran, I got my phone out and I phoned the deacon who was looking after the shop. I said, Frankie, something's come up. I'm not going to make it. You'll have to find another priest to cover for me. And he's like, okay, Father, I'll do my best. And I had the best night ever. Me, Mo, and Usain. We had a great time. I was full of adrenaline, and you know what? I didn't feel even one drop of guilt. I just thought, I'm here and I'm having a great time. Next morning, though, I pop into the Olympic Village for the Sunday morning service, and I go straight up to Deacon Frankie, who'd been manning the fort the whole time, and I was singing away to myself. I was happy. And I said, so, Frank, who did you get to cover the Mass on Saturday evening? And then the words that cut me to the heart, he said, no one, Father. We couldn't find a priest, so we didn't have Mass. Now that was Saturday evening, so that was the Sunday Mass. And it was a Sunday Mass really for the athletes and the workers who hadn't won anything, who nobody had heard of, who nobody really was considering that. It was all about Mo and Usain. That's where I should have been, and I felt so ashamed. So I can see why Jesus gets mad at the scribes and Pharisees, the priests of his day. Jesus respects their teaching authority, and he tells people that they must do what the Pharisees say, but not to be guided what they do, since they don't practice what they preach. And he's right on both counts. For example, the Pharisees do know the law of God, and part of the law of God, for example, is the observation of the Sabbath. So when they say that you have to observe the Sabbath, or to the Jews of the time, they speak with the authority of the law. Just because I missed Mass that time, therefore denying people the opportunity to celebrate the Mass, doesn't mean that the church's teaching lost any authority. But the personal integrity that goes with it, when I say those things, I've lost that. And personal integrity, when we think about it, is really what we're looking for in our leaders. In fact, it's what separates leaders from those who are merely in charge. Now, we all instinctively sense that what we say should match up to what we do. When it doesn't, we try to cover it up. How we present ourselves is often how we would like people to see us. And we sense this in Jesus' critique of the Pharisees. He criticises them for wearing broad phylacteries on their heads and long tassels on their arms. I found a picture of what that looks like today. So a phylactery was the thing you see strapped around the guy's forehead there, and the tassel is what he has strapped on his arm. Now, in the phylactery were the words of the Torah, the words of the law, the word of the great command, the Shema of God. And on the arm there were other words of the Torah strapped around their arms. So the more a rabbi wore, the bigger the phylactery, the more the tassels. It was kind of like the bling of the day, saying, "See how much I know, see how much you must listen to me, and how much I must be obeyed." It was a show of authority, but it was all on the surface. It often led them to corruption, because we all know how you get on the good side of the one who is in charge. You fill his belly with the best food, and you stick him on the front row. As their phylacteries get bigger, so do their bellies, as I look at mine. And they get further away from the people at the back, the one whom God is calling them to serve. But this has a knock-on effect, because now religion is governed by the lawmen, and is influenced by those who can influence them, those who can ply them with the best food and the nice things, and telling them how great they are. But who is really in charge when your man at the top is so easily influenced by a worldly show? It's not him. It's the circle around him. As long as he keeps up appearances, then everything is okay. The rabbi is great, and he's not to be challenged. But when he changes something that doesn't please them, then he's in trouble. It's very easy to get to someone who is used to having their ego stroked and getting the nice things in life. You just tell him he's rubbish, and then take the nice things away. See how quickly he changes his mind. But Jesus couldn't be more different than the religious authorities of his day. He doesn't wear any phylacteries, there are no tassels. Yeah, he goes to banquets, but they're banquets with the poor. Nobody has any hold over him. He's free because he always takes the last place and sits with the gamblers, the alcoholics, the prostitutes, the diseased, the mentally ill. You name a group that society looks down on or tries to avoid, they're Jesus' friends. He's the only one qualified to talk about the conduct of his fellow rabbis, because he doesn't just practice what he preaches, he is what he preaches. It's from this place that he shows us what real authority is. He's talking to his disciples when he says this: "You must not allow yourselves to be called rabbi, because you have only one master, and you are all brothers and by extension sisters." In this he reaches past all the show to reveal the skin of a person underneath. Because in God's eyes, we're all equal, whether we're the Pope or a person on the street. And God even comes down to share that equality with us, so that we can say he sees us not from on high, from his throne, but on our level, what it's like to be human. He feels it inside. Our master, our rabbi, is poor and fragile, just like us. And then he says, "You must call no one on earth your father, since you have only one Father, and he is in heaven." Now let Father James explain. Quite tough. Not really. Because if we're all brothers and sisters, then we must all share the same Father. So to call a priest Father is to acknowledge the one appointed among you who points not to himself, but to God our Father in heaven. Our job is not to take the Father's place, but to feel ourselves as a part of his family and to bring others into that family. So in my case, Father is my job title. It's not who I am, and you all share it with me. But then Jesus goes straight to the heart. He says, "Nor must you allow yourselves to be called teachers, for you have only one teacher, the Christ." Now, in Jesus' day, teachers didn't have classrooms. They didn't write their lessons on whiteboards and tell people what they had to know. They did what Jesus did. They invited them to share in their lives, into their homes. The disciples were free to leave at any time. And those who did stay, they stayed because they loved their teacher and they wanted to be like him. Sounds a bit like a family. See, our faith is not a set of teachings to be memorized or a philosophy. It's a real lived relationship which transforms us from the inside out. We're not meant to be teachers. We're meant to be like Jesus, and Jesus makes disciples. Jesus is the authority of our lives, and he's not in charge of us. He gives us the power to crucify him whenever we want. St. Paul's example in the second reading today of authority, it touched me because it's so much like Jesus's, I think. He says, like a mother feeding and looking after her own children, we come to love you so much that we were eager to hand over not only the good news, but our whole lives as well. See, a mum wants nothing more for her children than to be healthy and happy. And I'm always astounded at how resilient mums are, as if it's nothing to suffer abuse from their children in order to give them this health and happiness. The hurt seems to make mums love even more. So it is with Jesus. Jesus isn't in charge, but he's our leader, because he reaches into the depths of our desire for love and belonging and shows us the way. I read this statement on Twitter earlier in the week, which really struck me. It says, an authority is someone who lives most intensely what you desire. Authorities are authentic. What they say and what they do are the same, and it points to who they are. To surrender to the authority of Jesus is just to fall in love. Because isn't that what we all desire? Now, I'm going to be honest. Since Olympic Gate 5 years ago, the collar has got me into some other sweet sporting gigs. For example, this one here. So occasionally I get offered tennis tickets, and you know how much of a tennis fan I am. And I also say this was my day off, so I wasn't sneaking out of church. But obviously I wanted to be a bit undercover, so I'm not in my collar here. And I get a text from my mate saying, Jimmy, look up, look at the camera, do that. And they caught me on TV behind Rafa Nadal. So, you know, it can still work out. But the casing that I wear, the clothing I wear, has taught me something very important. That how you present yourself can be key to how you would like to be seen. Because it's the protective casing around something which is precious and vulnerable. At last night's homeless shelter, I was chatting with some helpers who were actually shocked at how well dressed and clean most of the homeless people were. They were expecting them to be untidy and to smell. It was an important lesson for me as it was for them. Though these people may be rock bottom in the eyes of most of the world, they still desired, in a way that they probably couldn't even realise or say in words, that to feel like members of the human family, to be included and loved like everyone else. How they presented themselves was testifying in the most powerful way that they were still children of God and to be treated like children of God. I hope we did. In them, we found our masters of true wisdom, the fathers of our faith, and our one teacher, the Christ. As one family, let us surrender all authority to the one who lives most authentically what we desire. If we do that, we see Christ everywhere. Amen.